It was a moonless night, and I found myself in the role of the designated driver among my group of friends. The party had been a blast, but now it was time to head back home. My companions for the night were Michael, Eddie, and Daniela. Living in the countryside meant that any trip to the bars or parties required traveling long distances, so having a sober driver was always a big deal. We were navigating the 513, an unlit highway that snaked through the occasional house but was mostly flanked by dense forests. This road was our lifeline to the town where most of the bars were located, and tonight it was the setting for an unforgettable incident. As we made our way back from town, Daniela suddenly began to cry out that she had to relieve herself urgently. I reassured her that it wouldn't be much longer, but I couldn't deny that I was feeling the same urge. Her drunken fit didn't help matters, so I made a snap decision to pull over by the side of the road and venture into the woods for a quick pit stop. Daniela got out first and disappeared into the tall crops on one side of the road, while I made my way to the opposite side and into the woods. I've always been the type who can't stand the thought of people watching me while I take care of business. Finishing first, I got back into the car where Eddie and Michael were singing along to the blaring music on the radio. I sat there in silence, growing increasingly impatient. It seemed my two intoxicated friends had completely forgotten about Daniela, who had now been absent for 5 minutes. I decided to go back out and call her name. Since Michael had a stronger voice than I did, I urged him to come with me. Eddie, too far gone to be of any help, remained in the car. With a flashlight from my glove box, Michael and I pushed our way through the thick, overgrown crops, heading in the direction we assumed Daniela had gone. Michael called her name while chuckling uncontrollably. I understood why he found it funny given his condition, but I just wanted to ensure Daniela's safety and get home. Over the rustling of crops and Michael's laughter, I heard something else in the vicinity. I placed my arm in front of Michael's chest to stop him, and suddenly, all that filled the air was the night breeze weaving through the crops. "What was that?" I whispered, and he replied with a hushed, "Shh." Michael called out Daniela's name again, and I joined in, assuming she was playing a prank on us. But the footsteps ceased once more, so we ventured deeper into the crops, arriving at a narrow clearing. It seemed like a path for people to walk through the fields, about the width of 2 people. I shone my flashlight to the left and then to the right, but my light revealed not Michael, but a strange man I had never seen before. His facial features were obscured, but he exuded an unfriendly vibe. My instincts kicked in, and I sprinted back in the direction we came from. It took me only about 10 seconds to reach the car. Eddie was still passed out, and I didn't want to waste time trying to rouse him. I honked the horn repeatedly, hoping to get Michael's and, hopefully, Daniela's attention. Finally, Michael emerged from the crops, dragging Daniela, who appeared unconscious. I rushed to help him lift her into the car and carefully placed her in the back seat. Michael pointed out a gash on her forehead, presumably from a blow with a heavy, sharp object. As Michael began to sober up quickly due to the situation, he revealed to the nurses at the hospital that he had seen a man dragging Daniela's limp body deeper into the crops before fleeing. He had kept this information to himself in the car, but it now made perfect sense. That mysterious man in the crops with us that night was the one responsible for Daniela's injury. Daniela eventually woke up, but her memory was a blank slate from the moment we stepped into the party until the time she was struck on the head. The events of that night remained a chilling mystery, one we were all too happy to leave behind. The clock on my car's dashboard read 12:17 a.m. as I cruised down the deserted highway. I had just finished my night shift at the pharmacy, and this late-night drive was becoming routine. However, I always felt a bit uneasy driving this late. The lack of light and the possibility of deer wandering onto the road made it a tad nerve-wracking. As my headlights cut through the darkness, I noticed a row of reflective lights in the distance. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively slowed down. The lights turned out to be a line of traffic cones, accompanied by a flashing blue light. A man in a reflective vest was standing beside them, waving his arms, signaling for me to stop. I braked just in time, the screech of my tires echoing in the silence. The man approached my car cautiously. Underneath his reflective vest, I glimpsed what appeared to be a police uniform. He rapped on my window with his finger, gesturing for me to roll it down. I complied, studying his face as the window lowered. He was a young black man, about 6 feet tall, with a hint of stubble and an earring in his left ear. His voice was unexpectedly calm and unauthoritative as he asked for my license and registration. Confused, I questioned whether I had done something wrong. He hesitated for a moment, glancing away, then replied, "Sir, this is a sobriety checkpoint." I was perplexed. Why did he need my identification and registration if I hadn't been suspected of anything? He leaned back slightly and instructed me to step out of the car for a sobriety test. I complied, and as I walked along a line of tape he'd laid out on the ground, I noticed how tall he was, his presence looming over me. He observed my every move uncomfortably close. The test was easy. I walked the line without stumbling. When I reached the end of the tape, I finally noticed that the flashing blue light wasn't on a police car, but on a plain sedan parked nearby. Suspicion gnawed at me, and I asked to see his badge. His blank stare was disconcerting, and then it hit me. This guy wasn't a real cop. He muttered something unintelligible and turned toward his car. Seizing the opportunity, I sprinted back to my car, started the engine, and floored the pedal, swerving through the traffic cones. In my rearview mirror, I saw his headlights coming to life, but I was already going over 60 miles per hour, and there was no way he could catch up. I took the next exit, switched off my headlights to avoid drawing attention, and made my way home. The absence of a dash cam left me wishing I had concrete evidence of the bizarre encounter. It felt like something straight out of a news headline. I embarked on a road trip from Maine to Upper New York to spend a week with my family. The journey commenced straight after work, around 5:30 p.m., and I hadn't anticipated arriving at my destination well past 1 o'clock in the morning. The top of my Jeep Wrangler was down, allowing the warm night breeze to envelop me. I found myself deep in Vermont when the gas light suddenly illuminated, accompanied by an ominous beeping. Unfortunately, my car's gas gauge had been malfunctioning for a while. My brother, who had driven it the previous day, had assured me that he had filled it up, but that seemed either inaccurate or misleading. The gas couldn't have been consumed so rapidly. A blue service sign whizzed past, promising a gas station at the next exit. I veered off onto a desolate road that appeared to lead to civilization, or so I believed. My optimism quickly dissipated as the car began to shake and emit disconcerting noises. In a matter of moments, the acceleration came to an abrupt halt, and the car was rendered immobile. I couldn't believe my misfortune. I had run out of gas in the middle of nowhere. I clambered out of the car and dialed AAA, providing them with my exact location. They assured me that help would arrive within 20 minutes. While I appreciated the assistance, frustration gnawed at me as I realized I'd be stranded for at least that duration. For what felt like an eternity, I wandered aimlessly around my stranded vehicle. The night was eerily silent, devoid of any distant traffic or passing vehicles. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the rustling of nocturnal creatures in the nearby woods. Then, an unsettling development, an unsettling presence in the woods. Heavy footsteps, not those of a deer but distinctly more human-like. Fear began to creep in as the possibility of encountering a bear in these remote woods loomed large. Cautiously, I approached the passenger side of the car where the noises seemed to originate, hoping to catch sight of a harmless animal. And then it happened. Clapping sounds, as if someone was clapping their hands. 2 claps, followed by 3 more, forming a bizarre and chilling pattern. I called out into the darkness, a strange hope in my voice, yearning for any kind of response. But the clapping ceased, leaving me in an eerie silence. I retreated back to the car, my heart pounding, and waited, feeling exposed in the darkness. The footsteps in the woods returned, drawing nearer. Panic set in as I saw a face peeking from behind a tree. The eyes were lifeless, and I couldn't discern whether they were fixed on me or not. I was paralyzed with fear. I quickly rolled up the windows, plunged the car into darkness by switching off the headlights, and locked the doors. However, my vulnerability remained. The top of the Jeep was open, leaving me exposed to whatever lurked outside. Then a hand grabbed me aggressively from behind, and I let out a blood-curdling scream. The grip on my shirt suddenly released as light flooded the area. The sound of a truck engine approaching sent relief coursing through me. I looked back to see the headlights of a AAA truck. The mysterious assailant had vanished into the night. I rushed out to meet the driver, a burly man in his 40s. I frantically recounted the terrifying ordeal, taking deep breaths between sentences. Something about his presence and demeanor was calming and reassuring. He filled my car with gas, and we both parted ways. Despite the comforting presence of the AAA driver, the memory of that night still haunts me. The image of the lifeless face peering from behind the tree remains etched in my mind, a chilling reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the darkest of places.